This is Dennis Raimondi with the Coffee League, found at thecoffeeleague.com. This is a podcast that discusses all areas of coffee. And I'm very, very fortunate today to have as a guest Mr. Kenneth Olson. He, along with Sarah Allen, is the founder of Barista Magazine, and he's also the publisher of the magazine. And if you haven't seen it or read it, go online and check it out. And I travel many different parts of the world, and I always find the magazine at the cafes that I go to, and I guess now most people find it online, and it's wonderful. And if you're interested in any end of coffee, either as a consumer or a professional in the industry, it's a great resource. Ken, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on with me
My
today.
pleasure.
So I read, by the way, I understand that you're a Washington Husky fan. So I always pull for them, although I'm more of an Iowa fan, and we don't usually play each other. But and you're in Portland, Oregon now, which is a real epicenter in North America of coffee, I think. What
That's
got
true.
you into the world of coffee? How did you enter it?
I'd just say, backing up, ages ago, when I was a young man, the Washington Huskies played the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Rose Bowl, and it was fantastic, and the Huskies won.
There you go.
But
Iowa does not have a history of winning a lot of bowls. They get to them, but they don't always win. But there's always tomorrow. Uh,
right.
go.
So, I'm sorry. So, what was
Yeah, how
your
did you
the
get
real
into how
question?
did you get into coffee?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, my background, I guess, like yours, was in journalism and writing, and it was Sarah, my partner and wife, who started working in the specialty coffee industry. At the time, I did not even drink coffee, and she was the one who led the way and got started with coffee.
And then did when you first got involved with coffee? What was it as a barista? Was it at somebody? Did you start writing about it? Uh,
Yeah, it was as a writer. I've never, neither Sarah nor I have actually worked as baristas.
mhm.
We both had service industry jobs when we were younger. We both had, she worked in a bar. I had a server license and worked for a couple of microbreweries here in Portland. And that's the extent really of our service industry background. Although I
Mhm.
was also a dishwasher in a Chinese restaurant and all those kinds of fun jobs. But neither of us had any background working in coffee as a retail, as a barista or retail position. Like I said, Sarah got started. She was also a journalist when we met, working for the local paper here in Portland. And that was in the early 2000s, and they were rapidly shedding readership and positions, and she got laid off, which is pretty common, or was certainly at that time in the newspaper business. And she got started working then later at a different coffee magazine, and that's how she started working with specialty coffee. She left that position to work for a coffee company in Seattle, not Starbucks, a smaller one called
Mhm.
Soka.
Mhm.
And it was there where she got really involved with working with baristas. Specifically, at that time, that company was really heavily involved in barista competitions. And she really enjoyed the community and didn't really enjoy the job that she had and got frustrated with it until she said, I think we should start a magazine for baristas. And at the time, I was a freelancer writer, and that's, if you've ever done any freelancing, that's a real grind. And I was hesitant, but I asked if she thought it would really work, and she said sure. And I said, okay, let's try that. And we moved back to Portland from Seattle and started Barista Magazine in 2005,
Wow. And the rest is history. Now you mentioned it back
more or
when
less.
back when you weren't drinking coffee, did you? I
Yeah.
assume at some point you became a consumer of coffee, and if that is the case, when would
Yeah.
that have been, and how did you enter it?
Well, I drank coffee a lot when I was in college, and I'd always been a coffee drinker since then. However, I stopped drinking coffee because I wanted to get off of caffeine, and it's been a few years. And to be honest, at that time, I only thought of coffee basically as a caffeine delivery
Right.
vehicle. Um, and so I didn't want to consume something just for to get a caffeine kick from it. And so I stopped drinking coffee for a few years, and then Sarah, as I said, started working with it. And one thing that happened was we were visiting her family in the San Francisco Bay Area. That would have been probably 2003, 2004, something like that. And we went to a coffee shop, which was not like any I had been to before, where they had probably 30 different kinds of coffee available, roasted and ready to brew. And I talked to the barista, asked them what of those overwhelming choices that they might recommend, and the barista recommended a natural processed coffee, which I gotta confess I do not remember the provenance of. I believe it was somewhere in Ethiopia, but I can't confirm that. What I do remember is that as soon as the barista put it in the grinder, the big burst of aroma and fragrance that came off of it smelled exactly like strawberries. And she brewed the coffee for me, and it was just unlike any coffee I'd had before. And I was really confused and blown away by it. And I really did ask, is this flavor? Did you add something to this to make it get these kinds of aromas and flavors to it? And she said, no, it's just the way that coffee is. It comes from wherever it came from. And I was like, no, but it tastes like you added syrup to it or something. She's like, no, that's the difference that different kinds of processing and different coffees can make. And I had no idea at that
What
time.
year was that?
That would have been probably 2004.
Right. And could I ask what establishment that was in San Francisco?
I believe the name of it was Royal.
Uh-huh.
It was not in it was in Oakland.
Okay.
And I think it's still there. It's not the importer Royal Coffee. It was just a cafe.
Right.
But it was it was really an aha moment for me, where I was presented with something that I didn't recognize as coffee, which I happened to like a lot. I realized, hey, I don't have to add sugar or milk or anything to make this taste like what I want to be drinking. Right. It was just a really flavorful, different brew on its own, and it really was illuminating to me, because it showed me that coffee could be different than what I normally thought of, which was pretty bitter, pretty dark, and sort of what at the time was a fairly traditional cup of coffee.
Right. And I think you expressed it very, very well, why people go to specialty coffee. It starts out as a vehicle, coffee does, for caffeine, and then the coffee becomes an artisan product in and of itself. And you got in at a very early point before me into really appreciating specialty coffee. I had a similar experience, but in Portland, Oregon, about 5 years after that. Another great area for coffee. And then I had the good fortune of spending a lot of time in Sweden and Denmark, and they were way advanced in that area as well. I being a journalist and not an expert in coffee or having worked in coffee, was really coming into it as an amateur, but somebody who really appreciated it. So you got involved. You and Sarah started the magazine, and then from that point on, and maybe in part because of your magazine, the specialty coffee industry worldwide has exploded. I mean, just in the last few years that I've been writing about it, I mean, I visited about 500 cafes in the U.S. and Europe last year. Every time I go back to a city, there's two or three
Mhm.
more really good places, and the standards are going up. And do you expect this growth to continue? And with growth, do you see some challenges in maintaining the quality?
Well, there's a lot of different aspects to that question, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, because the future right now for coffee is pretty murky. At this moment, I can say without a doubt, we are living in the single best time to be alive if you like drinking coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, no matter where you are in the world, you have access to the best coffees that have ever been produced with the most knowledgeable people working on them and with them from the moment those plants are put in the ground or before then even to when the coffee is harvested, processed, shipped, roasted, and prepared by a barista. Like it really is an extraordinary time that we're living in. And you said before, did our magazine have something to do with that? I don't think so. We really try to be a reflection of the community that we serve, and what's pushing it is individuals, people with a lot of passion for coffee and their profession, and recognizing that it is a amazing product that in a world that can seem very fractured and divided right now is
Mm-hmm.
actually the culmination of a unified world of a community all working together for a common cause. Like a cup of coffee that's served in Iowa or Sweden or in Portland, Oregon had to travel a long way the coffee that made that cup had to travel a very long way to get there. You can grow a lot of great things in Iowa or Oregon, but you can't grow coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who produced that at whatever origin it came from, worked their tails off to make that coffee as best as it could be. And then a lot of people have invested a lot into that, including the roaster there in Iowa or the barista here in Portland. So the present right now is a very exciting time for sure for coffee. And like I said, it's the single greatest time to be alive right now than there's ever been in human history if you like coffee.
Now, do you
The
think?
future,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
The future is what I was going to
Oh,
ask about. Yeah.
the future is a little scary though.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible we'll have great coffees. I would say it's very likely we'll have very, very good coffees, very expensive coffees, but we may not have a lot of other coffees. Between the pressures of climate change and migration and the sea market, it's a great time for us as coffee drinkers. It's a very difficult time for coffee producers, and unfortunately, the challenges the coffee producers are facing now are steep, and the future challenges appear to be even steeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe it was Jeff Watts from Intelligentsia Coffee once said that he thinks the future of coffee is huge automated farms like Brazil or Vietnam, and then a handful of micro farms serving, where you might produce a coffee that you can sell for $60 a pound, or an exceptional geisha, or really the exceptional micro lots, but very little farming by people who are the most productive farmers right now, which is small plot holders, small land holders in places like Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and all over Latin America. Those challenges are very tough to see a good solution out of.
Right. And does it follow the say the wine industry, or even the micro brewing industry, where like beer? I mean, there's a lot of beer
Mm-hmm.
produced, but the real quality the finer stuff. The same thing with wine. Wine being probably the most advanced in that area. The best. It becomes very expensive and more exclusive. Whereas I always think of coffee as not being an exclusive product, but something that's available to the masses, kind of a thing, and that it would be unfortunate if that changed, but it might, and maybe it is moving in that direction.
Well, you're right, and there is some like the beer industry. There's a big difference between Budweiser, Miller, and regional microbrews. And coffee could be looked at that way. There will be cheap coffee in the future, I should be clear, and it just may not be a washed Arabica. It may be a Robusta that's produced by an automated farm in Vietnam or in Brazil. There are definite ways to grow coffee in a very cost-effective manner that perhaps you could still make a profit, even if the overall tea market stays low. To be a functional business in that environment, however, probably you're not going to emphasize quality. You're going to emphasize quantity.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side of that is that there will be still people out there who will pay a lot for really exceptional lots, and perhaps farmers that can produce those really exceptional lots will be able to continue farming and producing those and having an ongoing business. Where it seems like there may develop a hole in the market would be what's now sort of the Arabica commodity market.
Mm-hmm.
Because those are the prices that we refer to as the C market. The C market is not specialty coffee, it's commodity coffee, which is typically bought and sold and used in brands like Folgers or Maxwell House, sort of the traditional coffees that are, as you say, accessible to everyone. Those coffees, I don't know what the future holds for those.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is that a lot of the coffee growers that we think of as producing specialty coffee, well, yeah, they do, but that's probably only a portion of their harvest, and that's the very, very best that they've grown. Well, their plants produce cherry fruit at other times or at other qualities throughout that harvest, and they're taking that away from those lots. They can get a really high price on a smaller amount, but they still want to be able to sell all that other coffee. They've invested a lot in it, and it's other potential income for their farm that they depend on. So if 20% they're getting a really good price for, but 80% it costs them more to grow and harvest than the kind of price they can get for it. Well, that's not a very sustainable market or model, and it's not something that they're going to continue doing for very long.
Interesting. Kenneth, we see in the coffee industry, Nestle's, I think, just bought 68% of Blue Bottle for some enormous amount of money. And, Stumptown, Intelligentsia, La Colombe, they've all been purchased by big companies. And it seems that they let them alone and let them maintain their quality. And I interviewed the green buyer for Blue Bottle recently, and he felt it was, it was good for the company. Charlie Haberger, I think, that they did that. But I'm not sure. What is your feeling about this consolidation? Good or bad for specialty coffee? And I'm thinking of the consumer that wants to have the better cup of coffee, that wants to have the deeper appreciation, that wants to have the aha experience that you had in San Francisco that time. This consolidation, is that going to contribute to that or take away from that possibility for people, do you think?
Well, not to be wishy-washy, but it can do both. I think it will probably do both, right? Like, there's a real benefit to the kind of economies of scale that the JABs and Nestle's can bring to those sort of coffee companies. They can help a company like Nestle can help a company like Blue Bottle expand. I just saw they opened another cafe in Korea. JAB can help maintain or expand, Pete's, Stumptown, Intelligentsia, whoever else they own, Caribou. And those are all legitimate businesses that are bringing really good coffee to people, in some of the cases, to people in places where they may not have had access to that kind of coffee before. The sort of professionalism that they can bring to those operations from the retail side, where they are really training baristas and are not looking at it as a barista as somebody who's probably only going to be here for a short time in a part-time position because it's a way station if they're going to earn a college degree or whatever else they're doing. They're hiring people who are really passionate about coffee, about service in general, and want to produce the best coffee and coffee drinking experience they can for their customers on a daily basis. Those things are all great. The other thing that goes hand in hand with that, however, is there is now a lot of concentration in coffee buying. A handful of companies are buying almost all, or not all of, but a lot of the specialty coffee produced. When you have fewer buyers of anything, that typically drives down competition and drives down prices.
Right.
And those conglomerates also use aggressive financing models and business models that allowed them to grow into giant multi-billion corporations to begin with. So those things are, like so many things, it's not all good or not all bad. There are good and bad on both sides of the ledger for it. And it's, again, so you can look at that and be like, oh, that's terrible. You're allowing such a few number of companies to control so much of the market, and they are artificially suppressing the prices that they'll pay. And maybe that's true. But it's also true then that you now have multi-billion-dollar industries with real interest in seeing coffee production continue. The JAB holding didn't buy all those coffee companies going, hey, we're going to be in coffee for 10 years, and global warming is going to raise sea levels and temperatures enough that nobody's going to be able to produce coffee in Central America anymore. Well, they wouldn't have invested billions of dollars into it if they are only going to crap out of it in 10 years.
Right.
So they will be hopefully very motivated to try to find some sort of solutions, or maybe they have enough money that they can bring political power and clout to bear that they can actually get something done combating climate change or making living wages a reality at the farm level. They're in the Spider-Man situation now. They have great power, that they have great responsibility. So hopefully they can use that for positive change.
Yeah, hopefully the power and the finances behind those enormous conglomerates can make it easier for people that want to make a living in coffee, starting with the farmer. Also, there are people I interviewed, Hannah Neuschwander from. She's the communication director with World Coffee Research, and a lot of the big giants in coffee that you mentioned are pumping money into the research they're doing to help combat the problems that are coming with climate change and leaf rust and all the other stuff that coffee has to deal with that has an enormous impact on production.
Absolutely. It's one of the more fascinating and unbelievable things to me, being involved in this industry for as little time as I look at it as being involved for a very little time, 15 years, to see how much more investment in research there is now. And the converse of that is how little research and investment there was, before the turn of the millennium. Coffee has been a multi-billion-dollar worldwide industry for 100 years, and yet very little research ever went into coffee production and varieties and processing and storage, things that I would have a hard time believing, and I don't know anything about it, but I would not believe that Coca-Cola doesn't spend more money on research on an annual basis every year than a lot of coffee companies. So that has changed somewhat, and as these problems become more acute and the potential catastrophes become greater and the risks greater, perhaps that will spur even more research. The problem is it takes a long time for coffee plants to grow and produce fruit. So you have to be thinking ahead, and you really have to be planning for a hotter, wetter world if you're going to produce a coffee plant.
Yeah, maybe this will get people super motivated to do something about climate change. If they think of a world without coffee, maybe that'll get people really pushing for it. I think so. We've been speaking with Mr. Kenneth Olson. He, along with Sarah Allen, are the co-founders of Barista Magazine. He is also the publisher of Barista Magazine. Check it out, baristamagazine.com. Fabulous. I don't often say this about other stuff, but it's a great resource. As a journalist, I'm very impressed with the quality of work they do. If you want to know about coffee, any end of it, whether you're in the profession or a consumer, check it out. It's online. It's also in hard copy. I see it all over, and I read it regularly. It's the one thing I read regularly, and do that and listen to some of my podcasts, and you'll learn a lot about coffee. From experts, and I am not an expert. I'm just a journalist writing about it, but really enjoying it quite a bit. Ken, thank you so much for your time. Any final words you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, I would just say the baristamagazine.com. You can read entire issues for free. Anybody can. We keep it the digital version of the magazine. We keep it free because we are a worldwide community and a voice for that community, and we want to make sure everybody can access that. We do charge only for the print version of the magazine, but the digital version is free, and we have a free app as well.
Great. And one last thing, go Huskies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.